This one, that's what the fun is. Cupcakes, there's like double those up.
Okay, welcome back to our work meeting. We'll jump right back in. We'll jump to 3.1, additional items for the city's strategic plan. Nathan?
Yeah, so the request was, should there be a few, we talked some things added, so I went through and included how they would be worded. I just wanted to make sure I was capturing what you were after. When we include these, one of the things I've been working on is actually looking at all these items and say, is anybody actually working on it right now? So it's not just text in here, so I'm thinking we'll bring, if you approve this, probably outside of the budget process, I need to bring just a conversation about the ones I don't feel we're working on, so we can get some specific directions on some of these concepts from council, more, not like, oh, do these steps, but kind of high policy. Is this still what we want to do? And if so, what role is council going to play in it? What is staff? Because there are a few, the first one is setting levels of service or acceptable levels of service. It says council, it's our first item, it's on in here. That's one I plan to bring back and talk through what we think that looks like in specific instances and just make sure that we're on the same page. So if this is good, or if you have questions, happy to answer.
I don't have anything. I thought it was,
That's good.
Tara, anything on this? Tara?
Yeah, I just would love to look at the wording again for the housing one. I don't know if we need the wording about trying to achieve attainable housing in our strategic plan. When I first brought this up, I was more concerned about the fiscal responsibility of this money that we're collecting and making sure that money gets used to benefit our residents. And maybe that's a subtle difference with the wording, but I wouldn't want someone to look at our plan and saying that we're spending lots of time and resources on creating attainable housing. I'm open to conversation about that if like that was what was intended in other council members' minds, but I was curious about the wording on that.
I agree with you, Tara.
I think it's out of our purview, but I think we should also, maybe it's a thing of like, we're not going to impede or have roadblocks or something like that. I don't know how you would word that, but.
I don't think it's not in our purview because that's our budget. It's a budget. It's a financial component that comes in that we just need to make sure it's being spent.
Because we're talking about the same things though, right? So Tara's referring specifically to that set aside money and having a plan on what to do with it. Correct. Versus the general idea of attainable, affordable housing, right?
So what I can do is rework this EV 3.4 to match closer to that. So when you, and maybe I'll just talk with Councilor Anderson offline about some ideas on that. And then when we bring it back, we'll just highlight that we've changed that to more on the housing monies, the set aside we're getting off of the CDAs and how we're going to use those funds. If that works.
Is that okay? We good?
That's
Is that good, Tara? Is that kind of what you were thinking?
Yeah, that is what I was thinking. And then just my other part of this conversation would be, it's great we put it in the plan, but I would like us to make sure that we're reviewing it and using it. I know the staff does that, and it would be interesting to, think of the best way for the council to do it too, so we don't look at just once a year. I know when I brought this conversation, it was kind of with the focus of wanting to be able to know what we're working on as a council and to be able to easily talk about it. And so if putting it in the strategic plan in this way helps us do that, that's great. And maybe there's like a regular review of like our top council priorities, or maybe there's another way just to make sure it doesn't get lost as much for us. It's different than the staff having the tactical plan and having it reviewed monthly. So I guess my question is as a council, is there a way that you, that we've said, like, here's some priorities that we want to take responsibility for helping to put them into action?
Kind of assignments to the,
Would that be like every legislature session or every budgetary session?
Like our committee assignments.
Yeah, if any
and
fall to the
working
committees.
groups and things like that.
cause I was thinking the same thing, Tara. I love your point, I think, cause I was, like, the UTA, that's gonna be a lot of Wasatch Front Regional stuff. So that's gotta fall, I mean,
I kinda
So that-
designate one of us that's, I don't know. I
Yep.
don't know what the right wording is for that, but then, so just like our board assignments, right, so. Garbage board, we have that meeting, I'll report to all of you guys and
So that's
we
your
all
word,
will
yep.
know what's going on as we talk to others.
so regional, and I think we can do this real fast, I think regional's you and me, athletic complex, but I will say an example of that today is just having this conversation. Senator McKay came to our lunch, my weekly lunch today, and Matt even brought up first, like, we've got this complex, you know, and I mean, just because now it says on his radar,
We need some money.
suddenly Senator McKay thinks he has a plan to get us $85 million next year, right? So I mean, so that conversation happened, right? I mean, that's because,
And I think it's great, I mean, we met with Mike Kennedy too, and we were all, had very similar talking points and key items.
that's a great point, yep. So I think Gina Road, I think we'll put that in Matt's lap, being his district, right? The sheriff's gonna bug him about it. So I'll try to head a bus rapid transit, cause I attend the UTA and the Wasatch Front meetings. Your solid waste,
Cause this isn't the whole plan, would it be helpful if maybe, my team, we just go through and identify ones that we think fit with where you're
Oh.
already focused on?
That's
Yes.
a good
We
idea.
could,
I like
we
that.
could just bring it back and say here, cause some of it would be more staff heavy, we just want, and I think where Council Henderson, she and I were talking about, where's the best spot for council to fit in, so we can do that and then we can,
I love
I think
that.
from a staff idea, identify where we really think we can leverage council to move it forward.
Love that, love that. You good with that, Tara?
Yeah, I think I just want to be on top of staff's mind that if you see a role for council, let us know, and if we have this as some of our priorities, then we'll be able to remember to ask you about it more, just to make sure that you have the support that you need and that you can use us where we're best fit. And then also, Mayor, I would ask if I could possibly be considered as like a second on the UTA stuff.
100%, yes, absolutely, yes. With your role, I think that's absolutely perfect.
Okay,
Great,
we'll-
well, that
we'll
sounds
work
good
on
to
that.
me, and thanks for having the conversation, I appreciate it.
And Tara, I definitely want you in that housing space for sure too. I
Great.
think that's your forte.
I mean, this goes to kind of our philosophy of get the right people talking, right? To, in the right places about the right things. Absolutely.
Love it. Okay, I love where we're headed with this. Okay, Tara, thank you for bringing this stuff up. This has been helpful. Perfect. Okay, you good, Nathan? You got
Yes.
what you need? Okay. Okay. We'll go to 3.2, discussion of the proposed capital improvement plan for fiscal year 27 to 36. Kyle.
Thank you, Mayor. First, before we get started, I've given you some handouts and I did send some of these out electronically. Just to highlight for you.
Did you know I wouldn't open anything electronic?
Well, some of you might be like me who can't see the small print, so I thought you might need to expand it on the screen. So, the one on the legal size paper is just, the next 2-year capital projects, but they have descriptions on them, so you will know, what the, project is for, especially on some of the transportation projects. We like to put phase 1, phase 2, and you might not have any idea what that is. Trevor in our GIS department did make a map, it's just a single 11 by 17, showing you, for the next 2 years where the projects are located, the proposed projects are located.
And I will point out, the ones that look like they're all on top of City Hall, they are things like upgrading the 10-year-old equipment in this room, those kind of things. So it just looks like there's a lot stacked there, but if you read it, it's mostly IT stuff.
The 11 by 17 that's blue, is the 10-year CIP, but it doesn't have the descriptions because it would have become a book and needed to be bound if it would have had all that. And then on the top, I did put in the vehicle, request forms, so the departments use these to request their new vehicles after they've gone through the vehicle condition assessments. To try to save some space, I didn't put the condition assessments in there. As we had discussed in prior years, we have a fleet committee and a fleet manager that go through and assign vehicles a score, and once it hits a certain score, it is eligible for replacement. More than happy to provide those sheets to you, if you'd like those, that shows why, the vehicles that are being proposed for replacement are on the list. With that being said, so tonight's goals, we're just gonna quickly review the CIP creation process. Of course, review and discuss the proposed capital projects. There are gonna be a number of projects we would like some input on and further clarification. And then review some next steps relating to the budget, depending on how the discussion goes. And then just a few notes, so this is not a final recommended list. We did want to get your input on this list before we made a finalized formal proposal to use a council with the tentative budget. And then there is some capital equipment such as, Nathan mentioned, the AV equipment in this room isn't on the CIP list, but it's in the budget, but we will go through those requests tonight. So it's not necessarily a number match. So just really briefly, the CIP creation process, so beginning of the calendar year, actually it was a little bit before, the departments will input their capital budget requests or requests that they've heard council and mayor discuss that might need to be going into a future budget. A CIP committee, which is made up of all city departments, evaluates and then ranks those requests. The CIP committee will make a formal recommendation to the city manager of what projects to include in the budget. And then staff will discuss that tentative list with the city council for input. And then the city council will present as part of their tentative budget his recommendation on which projects to fund. And then ultimately, the council and the mayor have the checkbook, so the city council will adopt the capital projects as part of the budget in June unless there's a proposed tax increase. So to shell shock everybody, the front, I did at a glance on what the projects are by funding source. So you're gonna see we're proposing approximately 88 million of projects. The items in red are possible bonds, so one is for a police public safety building, which we will discuss later. It's also in red because we do need more discussion on that. And then the second MDA obligation bond is also in red because there is some developments on that and it might be worth delaying that bond, that second bond that we had discussed when we issued the first bond last June.
Those are the items that we said we would deal with later. I would say the city back many years ago said, we'll deal with it later, and now is later. It's time to start fulfilling our obligations.
This is the oak tree we planted.
So first up, we'll discuss what we consider general capital projects. And so these are projects that are funded by general revenues of the city. Sometimes you'll hear them called general fund projects. They don't have another dedicated funding source tied to them. So I probably won't go through each one individually, but I would like to highlight some of the more, the higher dollar amount ones. So that first one, we do have a reimbursement that we entered into a number of years ago for portions of 118 South and 126 South. That's all tied to impact fees with Teton. The council last year amended that agreement. The interesting thing is we are using impact fees, that is the basis for the reimbursement. However, only a portion of what we're reimbursing is impact fee eligible. So this is the part that is not impact fee eligible through transportation fees. The next one on the list, as you are most likely aware, is that our lease with our current animal services facility is coming up soon. The current plan is to remodel the old Fire Station 103 as we build a new one. That will require approximately 1.2 million in remodeling costs. That number still needs to be revised as we go through the needs of that building.
I think you're gonna have pretty high HVAC, that'd probably be where a lot of the cost comes in, but our plan right now is that's what we do. So if it comes in less, but if it comes in more than that, then we will be trimming it back to fit that.
And then just as a reminder, in the animal services budget, they did increase their operating budget, in 28 to try to account for some of those things they're going to need to buy to operate the facility that are kind of outside of those capital needs.
Eventually we'll be able to bring their lease, we're paying a lease out there, which is in that budget, that will come down, hopefully those will balance out.
And you'll be able to bring some equipment from that
We're-
current
yeah,
facility,
we'll-
right? A lot of the
We intend to bring
kennels and.
stuff, what we can from there, that will fit. It's really just, we're now taking on another building to maintain and do things like that,
It's an older building that has.
Is there any structural repair stuff in it that's needed or?
that's what, we're out with an RFP right now for architect and structure. just to
That
make sure
RFP is going out live this week and
It's
then
fit for firefighters, but not for dogs.
No, it's not even fit for firefighters.
Well, I actually think that dogs will be happier than the firefighters.
Yes.
They like it over there. They tell me it's haunted. I don't know if I believe that. Freak Shelley out.
So, one request from our assistant city manager was, to start looking at beautification, and one of them is, art mural. In the request, it was thought of possibly the park on Main Street, but, she was open to anywhere at council direction, so if this is approved, that would be a council discussion on where that mural would go.
I think it's a great idea.
We have an opportunity to do some traffic light integration with UDOT next year, so this one is not in the list that was sent out with the packet, just as an FYI. It's a relatively new development, so we do have that on the request list. Another one is we were discussing internally as staff. Yeah.
I think it came
Yeah.
right at the end of
Yeah.
last week. We're like,
Right when the packet had gone out the door. We've been discussing, we realized we don't have a plan to address where to move the message boards. As you know, with the development of the commons, that message board was removed, is currently being stored at the Public Works Yard. This is a very rough estimate of what it would cost, to relocate, the message boards to another place.
we don't know where yet though, so that's probably a conversation we'd be open to having, cause we can come with all sorts of spots and reasons why those aren't great, so I'd like to talk it through.
We can put signs at every road entrance.
That's gonna have another zero then.
Another zero, yeah. Another zero there.
As you may or may not remember, as part of us joining Transjordan was we do have to make a capital contributions. Is it for 5 years, Trevor? It's 4. So, it's $100,000 a year, so that has been put into the budget. We are all also recommending, to replace the splash pad at Rosecrest. However, we've been having internal discussions. Maybe that doesn't necessarily look like a full replacement, complete tear down. Maybe it's more replace equipment as needed. It's one of more of those things we would want to stay within the budgeted number, and we're just finding everything, especially anything park related, is astronomically expensive right now. The streetlight replacement project, that is a continual yearly thing we do, to upgrade our streetlights. One thing that we are looking to do this year and moving forward is, what we're calling a park amenity replacement fund. So we would dedicate each year a set amount of funds, to replace park amenities as they become old and aren't, not suitable anymore. And we'd use those funds as necessary to replace those items instead of, trying to smooth out, the replacement of those items. And as I've mentioned, when we discussed the streets budget, we do have the second funding of the Rosecrest Road reconstruction included. Just as a reminder, we reduced the pavement management funds, transferred them over here. So that $700,000 will go back to pavement management in fiscal year 28. And then we also do have funds saved from last year also. And then the last one, which we will need to discuss, the Public Works facility, that's why it's in purple. We are asking for 900,000 to continue, planning and design on the Public Works facility. So looking now at the how are we going to pay for it question, so right now in capital projects, we have about 4.5 million in fund balance. As a reminder, we had about 3.5 million last year in the general fund that was not spent, so per our fund balance policy, we transferred that to capital projects to be used for capital projects. General fund contribution, what that means is what we're planning on transferring in from the general fund to help cover these projects. And 700,000 of that 805 is that pavement management that was moved for the Rosecrest Road reconstruction. So that shows about 5.3 million available, which after deducting the proposed projects would leave about 460,000 left in fund balance for capital projects. And then on the 10-year list, because this is of course focused more on the 2-year plan, the average is about 2.4 million a year in general capital projects. And then the CIP committee tried to smooth out those projects as much as possible, so we're contributing a steady stream into general capital projects, so it's not going up and down. Moving on to park impact fee funds. So there are only a few projects being proposed for fiscal year 27 and 28. As you can see, one is the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, and then a trail around the DAI 118 South Business Center. The large one, why I've highlighted it red, is to start the phase 1 of Jackson Park, which would be $3.5 million. So as you can see, that's 3.7 million of requests. Going down to our funding sources and uses, if we funded the full 3.7 million, we'd be short about 1.2 million. And then I'm gonna flip to the chart really quick, but we can always go back to that other. So Trevor did do a 10-year analysis of what fund balance would look like for the park impact fee if we funded everything on the 10-year list. And as you can see, that blue bottom portion is showing the negative fund balance. So there is right now in the capital plan more projects than proposed funding.
This is a factor, we've talked a lot about this, that just because something's eligible for one of the impact fees doesn't mean there's money there. And so as we're putting this all out in those future years, it's going to have to be a conversation. If there's not money there, it's a general fund, then it has to compete against all the other projects as well. Just because something would be eligible doesn't mean there are impact fees to pay for it.
So we're taking 3 years of park impact fees and to pay for one park, still $1.2 million short. Yeah.
One thing that really is dependent on how much that negative balance is as you'll see, that $9.9 million bond for the developer obligations is mostly park impact. So park impact does have a debt service payment that is starting to come on in fiscal year 28. When we get to that, we'll discuss that a little bit more, but that also is affecting the number, and because I can't remember what the park debt service number is. I think Trevor had a glasses incident, so he might not be able to see, but we'll try to get that number.
And Jared's saying something I think we need to keep in mind. I think there's a very good chance we can roll Jackson into some of the athletic complex funding. Cause I think it is tangentially tied to it, right? I think that way we can pay for the open space part of it.
It connects with the trail.
It's physically
and everything else, so
connected,
if we're
yeah.
successful
Yeah,
in
and
getting that, we can roll that into it.
And there are some other funds that Wendy and I have talked about. There are some grants, actually some federal grants. I would really like to keep those confined because they create prevailing wage issues and they're just harder to maintain.
Right.
Are harder to manage and hard to actually get the money from the federal government to reimburse us when we spend those, but there are some opportunities out there for specifically Jackson Park in that area.
And I just think, again, trying to be creative, because if we can make the whole green space part of the project that we can fund with the other stuff, and then the park impact fees can pay for the playground and the other stuff, we would just like there. That way, I think you're cutting back the scale of the project really from park impact fee, but you're still building the park. I just think we're trying to be creative with how we can.
And we've also discussed,
Wanna make other people pay for
Yes.
stuff. Yes.
and we have also discussed internally as staff, maybe there's a way we can phase it. We can even have more additional phases to try to spread out the obligation.
But that one in particular, I think maybe the issue is that we want to start it now.
Right.
But like our conversation earlier, yeah, I'd like to, but if we don't have a plan to actually do it, then it's probably wiser to wait a little bit and do it right.
I think what we see every time we get a plan and an estimate, it is significantly more than what we all think it should be.
The plan has to be adjusted
Exactly.
accordingly.
So next, looking at transportation impact fee, as you know, we did just pass a new transportation impact fee master plan and rates. They have been factored into this model, so thank you, Trevor, for quickly updating those numbers. So, as you can see, there aren't relatively high dollar projects. I mean, they're still significant, of course. We have 3 traffic lights, planned, including Danzy Oaks and Harriman Main Street, Miller Crossing and Harriman Main Street, and then Auto Row and 126 South. There's also been a request for phase 1 of McDougal Road and phase 3 of Soleil Hills. And then every year, because we are a fast-growing city and our transportation plans are changing, the engineering department requests yearly money to just make sure that transportation master plan stays updated. We're looking at the sources and uses again, so right now we are at about 0 with fund balance. We are anticipating with the new schedule about 2.4 million in revenues. There is about 4.2 million in requests. So that would, of course, lead us, we're about 1.7 million short for the 2 years. And then looking at the chart, unfortunately, it looks a little worse than the parks chart does.
It kind of looks like the Titanic. Yeah, that's what it feels like too.
So again, I think the intent of what we're trying to show you is that for a long time said, oh, it's impact fee eligible, it's impact fee eligible. Great, we have checks, we don't have anything in the checking account. So we'll have to look at some of these and some will get pushed.
Especially the 2 higher dollar amount projects will most likely have to be pushed.
How does this correct itself in the future? Even for like say the parks, like replacement and, I mean, you're setting up that fund now, but.
So we're trying to set up a fund to replace them, but as you add more, we'll have to look at those size of those funds. And really, these kinds of projects, we're collecting impact fee on them. Where the general fund is gonna subsidize, but it's gonna have to compete with the other projects. And the maintenance replacement projects that we're starting to do. This is the challenge every city eventually faces. We've been in the rapid growth. And these were the one-time monies that a lot of you ran about, why don't keep those in the fund. So we've segregated those all out, and you're now starting to see these kinds of one-time money starting to come down. And then PIDs have changed what we're collecting as well, so. But it also took significant projects off the list that would have fallen on us, so they're probably a push on how they've impacted us.
And one takeaway, especially with transportation impact, is there are a few, as you look through the 10-year list, there are a few major projects such as 134th expansion that we might need to be a little more creative with or try to be more aggressive in finding grant money or state funding for. Because just looking at our revenue stream, it would be very difficult to fund those, especially the impact fee portion of those. Looking at vehicle and equipment replacements, so as you can see, the streets department did request a new skid steer and an asphalt roller, and then replacement of their four-wheelers due to age and hours of use. The streets department also did request a replacement of their variable messaging boards, so one each year. Parks requested a new equipment trailer and then replacement of two of their mowers. And then we get into the vehicles, so facilities is requesting a replacement to their current van with another van. GIS is requesting replacement of their vehicle, and it is due to age and mileage. And then Fleet, their own vehicle, which those are in the regular size paper sheets. And then police vehicles, we do have that vehicle replacement fund, so that is the funding source for those replacements. So you can see it's 14 with 2 new in 27, and then 10 with 1 new in 28. One important thing just to kind of keep in mind, especially with police, is where historically they had been buying vehicles in large chunks, so they were buying a lot of vehicles at once, and one thing they're trying to do is also smooth that out, so they're not buying so many, they're not replacing half of their fleet at one time, so. And then streets had a vehicle request, and then parks had a couple, and then one animal services vehicle. And then just what I'm considering other equipment, streets department requested radios that are mounted in their trucks for safety, also better communication during a storm. And then there are a number of information technology projects, not necessarily the most exciting until it breaks, as we know when communications equipment doesn't work, but hardware refresh, and then one of the things is work order software. So we've as you know, our building department is moving to new software, which was funded in last year's budget. However, that is the current work order system for the city, so we do need to find a new work order system for the city in addition. And then the council chambers AV system replacement is being requested in 28, along with the court system, their AV system. And then police does have a Faro replacement and light trailer, which I did discuss when we went over their budgets. Moving to one of the discussion topics, so when we proposed the first bond last year, that was funded last June, we did mention that there would be a second phase to that to complete all of the MDA projects that we've identified that needed to be complete. So there's a few things on that. One is we might actually have some money left over in the first bond that can go to some of the second bond projects. We're still working and finalizing cost estimates on that, but it could be $2+ million there that we can use for some of these projects. One of the others, especially on the park projects, is the Hidden Oaks Open Space Improvements is one, plans for that actually need to be solidified better and a more concrete plan put in place. The MDA doesn't necessarily have hard dollar amounts in there of what has to be spent. So we just want to make sure that we are value engineering that to provide the best possible product for the least cost on that. And then the $2 million athletic complex seed money is we did have an obligation in the Hidden Oaks MDA that was
Creek Ridge.
Creek Ridge, thank you. Get my MDAs mixed up. Creek Ridge had a $2 million obligation for a regional park. That was relieved when their MDA was modified. So right now the proposal was to use that 2 million towards the athletic complex, which I think was the intention all along when that MDA was amended. And then just another thing on bonds in particular, especially when we get to those other bonds, is we have 18 months from the date we issued that bond to complete those projects without incurring what's called arbitrage. Basically, the IRS doesn't want us earning interest on our tax exempt money that is sitting in a construction account. So unfortunately, in the next couple budget amendments, you will see where we've had some positive arbitrage and we're having to make payments. So I'm really trying to avoid that, and I wanna make sure we have the projects ready to go, especially in the interest rate environment we are in. So moving to another discussion topic is the public safety building. So in fiscal year 27, there's a request for 1.5 million that would be for design and engineering, with construction following in 28. So that would be a total of $21.5 million. So historically, public safety has been funded by the HCC in order to afford a bond payment. Most likely a tax increase would be needed if that was the funding source. Not most likely, a tax increase would be needed. So down at the bottom, I did put out a few scenarios of different bond amounts and what the tax increase would need to look like to cover the bond payment. And then just as of a note, only about 2.4 million of the total, that 21.5, is impact fee eligible. And that's if we're including storage in the bond. The IFA actually splits out storage from the building itself.
Intent there, just show you the magnitude.
Yeah.
Of what that looks like.
Also on public safety, just some other facility needs that are in the CIP is the police has identified the need for a substation with the two future fire stations. That would currently we have approximately 1.6 million requested for both of those. Once again, on those, the funding source has not been identified. One thought I had while putting these together, once again, it does go back to Councilmember Henderson's, we need to have a plan on these. This would possibly be eligible to use the new growth property tax funding, depending on how the council wants to balance that, since that is used for officers, to hire new officers and other items associated with growth. But that is an idea I had because those substations are required due to growth. And then fire, we do have in the capital plan the need for 2 more stations. So one would be the station near the community college campus, which would be a larger station, at least in the plans right now, and then another station on 7300 West. One important note on here is we do need to update the long-range model to fully understand the impact of these stations and what that does to the property tax funding source on there. We've had a number of changes with the fire district participating in the RDAs, and then also a portion of that commander position is being proposed to be paid for by the fire district, so.
So I note that the fire station next to Salt Lake Community College is budgeted before the one on 7300 West. Has it been determined that that area will need protection or additional before 7300?
I think it's kind of a push. We're not 100% sure right now. We just kind of guess that it might, but just simply because of the way the construction is going. But Olympia is going faster. We'll have to see with the new 103 how it's being stretched with Olympia. So right now that's kind of our guesstimate. Those could flop. You could see one having to come up earlier. We'll be watching those calls and response times and trying to judge it from that.
Just notice in the last data set that we got from UFA that southwest part of the city has the longest response times. At least in that data, which is I think almost 2 years old now. I think you had data from 2023. I think that was the last one I looked at.
CRA.
So, thank you.
Quick question back on that, potential tax increase. Is that just for the building itself? It's not for the current budget that was in front of us? There's no-
Correct, it's not, we're not proposing that in
Yeah.
this budget. We
Right.
need to talk, now in 2028, we have this construction.
They're just trying to show us if we were to do this, this is
Yeah.
this is what
I
it
just
would
wanted to
mean.
make sure it wasn't included in the
So-
current budget. Okay.
It's in the capital that, hey, this is what we're thinking. We were talking this morning, I don't know if that's the number we got from the contractor, but that wouldn't include it's called FF&E, your fixtures, furnishings and equipment. That's another percentage of that, that's probably about another $1 million that you typically, some of the equipment. Things like window shades, so you don't get blinded when the sun comes in, those are all things, those aren't $1 million, but you add all that stuff up, it gets pretty spendy. So this was really just to start the conversation and put in your mind, this is the magnitude of this lift. Hopefully our residents understand when we took the police station on, what we had was a substation for UPD, and they are crammed in there, so as we try to add, there's only so much we literally are, it's like musical chairs, trying to squeeze them into places and see who loses, and we're gonna shift you, we've got people down at Rockwell with animal control, we're gonna move some others to another facility we have. Eventually, the biggest concern I have without having a police station is we don't really have a true designed evidence storage. Cody may have other concerns, but that's a concern I have because of the obligations we have to keep that stuff and how you keep it, and it's just, we do a great job in a closet type environment.
we're doing a great job with what we have, but it only takes one case to push all that to beyond the breaking point, so.
Because we have some strange rules here in Utah about what we have to keep and for how long, so.
Next discussion topic, got a lot of tonight, is the Public Works building, which we have discussed. The Public Works Director brought a couple schematics a few council meetings ago. Currently, it's broken into two phases, phase one and a phase two. So phase one, Public Works would like to continue with the design and engineering for $900,000. So that would be programmed into the current 27-28 budget. However, there is the question on the construction in 29 of 17.3, which would be a bond payment of about $1.4 million a year. And then I did also put the phase two in 2034, which once again is another 15.5 million. So as staff, we have been discussing some other scenarios. One would be to split off the fleet building into its own phase, so we would increase the number of phases. This is a back of a napkin, quick number that our Public Works Director did of 6 million. That would drop our yearly debt service to $455,000, which, while it is still a large amount, it is somewhat more manageable than the 1.3, 1.4. Finally, second to final, when we discussed the last water rate study, we did mention in that study, and it was put into the model, that any capital projects that the water department would need to do would be bonded for. So this is the current list of proposed projects. The bond amount does fit within the model, so Trevor did go through and make sure that the bonding amount would fit in with the model. I did list out the projects. As you can see, one of the largest is secondary reservoir for Zone 4. And then there is some Olympia Zone 5 and 6 water infrastructure, transmission lines, couple secondary wells and pipelines, portion of a water tank for Zone 3 in Olympia. And some other projects, as you can see on the list.
Curious with the zone for secondary reservoir, I mean, it's down the road, I'm sure, I'm just curious.
Well,
Well,
Is-
if it's in the bond, we gotta do it
so the cove,
pretty soon.
so the cove is just the area, it's not necessarily serving just that area.
That's just the location.
That's the location.
Of it.
Yeah, so right now it's planned up near the White Hollow Trailhead. We
What's
still
the
need-
size maybe compared to Black Ridge?
Oh, so the reservoir is likely going to be a tank,
Okay,
an
So,
enclosed tank. It's a
okay, all right.
reservoir just because that's a distinguishing
Gotcha.
between irrigation and culinary.
Okay.
So I think it's 2 million gallons. And I think there's some water line that's included in that 7 million. But we're currently serving that area through just variable frequency drive pumps. And so it's difficult for us to keep up with peaking, so we need
Gotcha.
storage.
it's not gonna necessarily increase the availability of areas that currently don't have secondary.
It
It's
won't
just-
necessarily add the ability to serve more people now, because we
Gotcha.
need the infrastructure to push the lines to get it out, but
Gotcha.
it will help operationally. And it's been in our master plan forever. It was on our capital plan. I don't know, it's been on our capital plan for 5 or 6 years.
Thank you.
One important note, similar to the other bonds, is we wouldn't necessarily issue a full bond for 30 million. I would sit down with the engineers and public works staff and determine when they would actually complete these projects. Most likely, we would cash fund the design and then reimburse ourselves with the bond, just to make sure we can finish that project in the 18-month timeline. So there will be more to come on this, but this currently is the list of projects being proposed with the bond for the next couple years. But as I said, there's further refinement that's needed to determine when to issue the bonds and how much for the bond amounts. Finally,
Thank you. I was gonna say,
this is the last one. So stormwater, they do have a number of projects requested for storm drain, infrastructure, both repairs and then improvements, as you can see above there. And this is one of the positive ones, and granted, this is just looking at the 2 years. There is enough fund balance and anticipated revenues over expenditures to cover those projects. However, I am recommending that we undergo a stormwater fee rate study. It is something as staff we have been intending to do for years, but we just never seem to have the bandwidth. So I do think it's time we need to get moving on that, since we haven't had a study done since the stormwater fund was created, so it's probably worth the money. With that, are there any questions?
any questions?
A lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Thank you, Kyle, appreciate your time. I know we're trying to move, like truly, getting our heads around CIP, but like that's been a game changer, I think. I mean, the fact that we didn't have anything like this 5 years ago is just, this is just, so. thank
But it
you
is,
for all your
but
work on it.
staff does recognize it's a lot.
But it helps to go to the residents too.
But
and say,
we're,
like,
but
this
we're
is-
also seeing some of those projects move through the list now, right? In somewhat predictable manner, rather than every year this conversation used to be,
Just circles.
well,
Where do we start again?
what do you wanna do?
Okay, thank you, everybody. I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. We don't have any more close, so we're gonna go in there and that'll wrap it up.